Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If your attention, please. Welcome to the Revere City Council Subcommittee on Public Works. Please rise and salute the flag. For those of you who have cell phones, please put them on silent or vibrate, including me. Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We have two items on our agenda today, 18-040, and the motion, if the clerk would like to read the first item.
First item on the agenda is Council Order 18-040, that the mayor direct the city engineer, along with outside engineering firm CDM Smith, to meet and discuss a long-term solution to the flooding problems that exist on Sagamore Street. Further, that this meeting be held in conjunction with the Public Works Subcommittee to allow for impacted residents to be informed of the meeting by virtue of the public/open meeting law, so they can provide testimony as to their individual situations.
Let me just introduce our councilors that are present today. Committee members of the Public Works Subcommittee is Councilor McKenna, Councilor Morabito, Councilor Powers, and Councilor Rizzo, and myself, Councilor Novoselsky. Also, we have with us today Councilor Keefe and Councilor Patch. So with that, the maker of the motion was Councilor Rizzo, so I would like to start it off with him and see what we can get done tonight, realizing we have a council meeting at 6 o'clock, and we do have two items on the agenda, so I want to make sure we don't go over those numbers with these two items. Thank you. Councilor Rizzo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate those in attendance here. I see members of CDM Smith, along with our new Superintendent of Public Works, Paul Argenzio, and Nick Rystrom, our city engineers here. This is an issue, and let it be known, I think we're all aware of the fact that there is a lot of flooding. Revere is a low-lying area. We do have a lot of, and obviously many homes were built in the floodplain. Storms becoming what they are, stronger and stronger, seem to be having a negative and adverse impact on our community. But we need to attack these problems one at a time. And one of the areas that I've seen that is being hit maybe one of the hardest is down on Sagamore Street. Whenever we have a storm that might be a little worse than others, it seems as though that area is now flooding increasingly more and more, to the point where I believe it's getting dangerous. So there are some conflicting thought processes on how maybe some of this flooding can be alleviated. Some solutions include underground piping. Other solutions that I've heard seem to be cleaning the culvert. I'm not exactly sure where it is, but with all the work and the millions and millions of dollars that we're spending on our infrastructure here over the last 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years almost, it seems to me that we should be starting to make some headway in areas. Instead of getting worse, hopefully would start to get better. So this is one of those areas that the people down on Sagamore Street and all the way down heading over toward Wonderland are getting hit extremely hard. And so I just wanted to have a meeting where the people that can actually make decisions or help make decisions that will help the residents down in that area not have to panic every time we get a heavy rainstorm or a major thaw. I would hope that maybe since the inception of the motion, since the motion passed several months ago now, I'm hopeful that maybe there's been some conversation as to how to fix this problem or how to make life a little more livable down there for those residents that have been impacted. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if any other colleagues would like to speak before calling upon the experts that are here that can help us understand what can be done and what's going to be done to help fix the problem. But I know I would like to hear from them during the course of this meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Counselor. Actually, I'd like to hear from the Public Works and City Engineer and CDM Smith before we get into the councilors asking questions, because they want to get some information before they get any questions. So who's the kind of leader of the pack tonight? Name and address for the record, please.
Nick Rystrom, 53 Genesee Street. So I think that before we, get into too much of, resolution, I think it's a good idea if we, go through a summary of just the drainage system, and how it operates in that area. As you might know that that area of Sagamore Street ultimately is discharged to the Eastern County Ditch, which then eventually makes its way out through the marsh, through Diamond Creek, out to the ocean. And so there is some local collector pipes and catch basins that in that area that collect the water. They convey it to the ditch in several different places, and then the ditch then would provide it a path out past the tide gate at Oak Island, which is there's a sluice gate there, and there's also a self-regulating tide gate there as well. Part of the I think issue is the general condition of the system and the ditch itself. As Councilor Rizzo had mentioned that, you heard that maybe some of the solution is related to the condition of the ditch and its ability to receive rainwater from the local collection system. And then also there is some issue with the capacity of the local system to handle and accept that water and convey it to where it needs to be. I think that we have some maps and things that, Bob, if we have those on the boards here. Oh, okay. So if you look, the one that is kind of like a zoomed in, or let's start with the figure 1. You can see the Eastern County Ditch is receiving water from the yellow area. And then if you go to figure 2, you can get a better idea of what that yellow area is comprised of. It starts essentially over by Wonderland and the NECO building, the ditch itself. And runs north, crosses over North Shore Road, makes sort of like a hard, it goes under Revere Street, makes sort of like a hard 90 to the west, and then makes its way eventually out to the Diamond Creek. So you can see also on there Sagamore Street and that part of the system that conveys water by gravity, ties in right just south of the playground there on Sagamore, where there's like a kind of a bend, which then goes underneath North Shore Road, makes its way out. And then part of Dunn Road actually goes down to the end where there is, in fact, a pump station that has a force main that forces water down into the ditch. Now, a big part of that, I think, is the condition of the ditch itself. Because of some of the vegetation that grows there and, other problems, that I don't think that the capacity of the ditch is what it should be. So it doesn't receive, and it's not able to receive and convey the water the way it should. And then in some of the various crossings, North Shore Road and also at Revere Street, you can see that there's evidence of some types of obstructions or backups in that main system. So initially, I think that you have the ditch. The primary concern to me is going to be the condition of where the waters are going, where the receiving waters are for the drainage subcatchment that we're talking about. If you can imagine, a bathtub, you can replace the bathtub, but if the drain doesn't work, it's not gonna do you any good, right? So the idea would be to, address, to quantify and then address the concerns within the ditch, so then you have a place for some of this water to go. Some of the issues that are localized in Sagamore, they may be as a result of the condition of the ditch there, but it, is also added to by just the size and the condition of the system. So it's sort of a combination of the two. But you're asking the ditch, which is, culverted in some places under the road, to handle water, and I think that the condition of it is not conducive to allowing that to happen. As far as maintenance of the ditch and of the system, I don't know, Paul, if you can speak on the maintenance aspect of it, scheduling and whatnot. But that's generally a summary of just the way that system operates and where it discharges to. I don't know if you have questions at that point, or?
I just want to, if I may,
Sure.
is this part of the county ditch that we turned over to the Ganji Corporation, to Vanguard, to clean out?
Yes. So if you follow it, you can see that it runs down kind of behind Waterfront Square.
Yep.
So that is part of this drainage system. Yep, that's right.
Councilor Morabito?
So, my question is about the maintenance. So how often is this maintained and cleaned, the culvert?
So I think that probably be better.
Thank you much. Paul Agenzio, Superintendent of Public Works. In my first 2 weeks here, this has become probably the biggest issue, cleaning of culverts and ditches. So I've been working with Richard Viscay to try to identify funding. There is some money, I believe, in the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund that can be used for the immediate cleaning of some of these ditches. I've reached out to Essex County Mosquito Control to see if they can contract them to do this work. I've just started kind of working on this, so I don't have a lot of information for you, but it's a great concern to me, and we are identifying funds, and this would probably be the first one that we tackle. So I can give you updated information as I get it, but we certainly want to do this, and it's of great concern to us.
Thanks, Paul.
I'm not done, sorry. I still
Hang
have
on
more
one second.
questions.
Richard,
I just wanted to add to his answer a little bit, if I could, just so I could explain it to everyone. Good
Name
evening.
and address for
Yes,
the
sir.
record, please.
Robert Button, CDM Smith, 75 State Street. As Paul had indicated, we're making plans to help the city with this assessment and clean out. Last year or the year before, we did work in Green Creek in the ditch there, where we went in and we inspected the pipe to see what conditions of the pipe were, the head wall, and then we actually profiled sediment in the open creek so that we knew how much in terms of what the volume of sediment in the open ditch was and what types of contaminants may or may not be present in that sediment, so that we could help the city when you go in and clean it out with the information that's necessary to properly dispose of it. So in addition to work that the Public Works Department is doing for some of the maintenance and cleanup, we're trying to help provide the information necessary to get rid of the material as well.
So basically, it has not been cleaned.
I'm not aware that it's been cleaned and
Do
probably.
we have a date of the last time it was ever cleaned?
I remember that the mosquito control, when we first started with some of the consent decree work, probably going on 6 or 8 years ago, maybe even longer, would clean out the ditches. A lot of times what they would do is just side cast the material. Some of you've heard that term before, and they would clean it out of the ditch and place it on the banks, and then over time it washes back in. So the real way to fix that problem is not only to clean out the ditch so that the ditch will work, but also to get rid of the material too, and that's one of the things that we're trying to help with. It makes a big difference, as Councilor said.
I just think this is total negligence. You have a bunch of people who've been bothered by this issue over the last, I can't even count how many years. And here we are, we don't even have a date of when we last cleaned the culvert. I'm embarrassed, to tell you the truth, as a city councilor. I sit here and we don't have any dates. On top of that, is there any, have you noticed any illegal tapping when you looked over, Mr. Button? Did you notice any illegal tapping into the piping, any of the culverts when you were in that area?
We haven't noticed, to my knowledge, any illegal tapping, meaning directing more water into the ditch. Right now, the Eastern County ditch, the total length is about 4,578 feet, and it receives about 88 acres of drainage, which is roughly 2% of the city's land area. We have looked at, through the consent decree, illicit discharges where sewage is getting into the drainage system, and we've tried to eliminate sewage connections. But part of the investigation's TVing the pipe and walking the ditch to look for connections. We'll also look and see if there's any additional flow. But the area that's tributary to that is pretty well defined, and we do know what that is. And if you look at this map here, which is Figure 2, as Mr. Rystrom was saying, this map on top, Council, this one here, the area that's highlighted in orange is that 88 acres that I was just telling you about. That's what drains to the ditch. The area that's the lighter shade of orange is within the 100-year floodplain. So what we're trying to show is, as you can see, the majority of what drains to the Eastern County ditch, 75+% of the total 88 acres is actually in the 100-year floodplain, as Councilor Rizzo had indicated before. That this light blue, just to orient you on the map, this light blue area that shows up everywhere is floodplain. It's the 100-year floodplain, and we put it on both maps just so you could get an idea of how much, as Councilor Rizzo indicated, how much of the city is actually in the 100-year floodplain. So it's just a little bit of additional information for you.
I commend my colleague, Councilor Rizzo, for bringing this forth, because this has been an issue for a long time. And I can't stress the importance to clean this culvert. So many people have been frustrated and lost property and had damaged property over this. It's just so frustrating. Let me ask you one more question. So
Absolutely, Councilor.
there's a fire hydrant. The engineer might, or DPW might know more about this. There's a fire hydrant at the way end of Sagamore. Is that functioning? And can water get to that fire hydrant?
At the end of Sagamore at Shawmut Street?
Yeah.
Okay. So all of the hydrants in that area, we had replaced 2 summers ago. As far as I know, when we replaced them, they were functioning at that time. And I haven't heard that they aren't since then. So as far as I understand, they are, yeah.
I think it's very important that we look at the.
Counselor, if I may, can we just stick to the flooding rather
Well,
than?
it has to do with the flooding. Let me tell you
Fire
why.
hydrants have nothing to do with
Let me
flooding.
tell you why.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because there's obviously a water issue down there in general. If you went out to other wards, if you visited that area and talked to neighbors, there seems to be piping issues within that whole area. So I'm wondering, the fire hydrants pulling the water, if somehow there is a lack of pressure there, because from neighbors, they are saying that there is a non-function hydrant there, and they were told that water could not be delivered to that hydrant. So I would like to make sure
If I'm correct.
it had nothing to do with the
Pat,
piping.
If I'm
or-
correct, the fire hydrant pipes are confined just to feeding water, not have anything to do with the Eastern County ditch or anything. They're all condensed and in pipe, solid pipe.
So there's a separate system. The
Yeah,
water,
it has
the
nothing to do
distribution
with
system
flooding.
is separate system from the stormwater, separate from the sanitary. If you know, so I can tell you that at the top of Sagamore, where Revere Street is, there's a new hydrant there. And then there's a few, down Sagamore, and then at the end at Shawmut, that's where you're talking about, I think, at Shawmut Street, there are new hydrants there. So those are all functioning. I'm not sure, where the information about it not being able to function, or maybe there's a miscommunication about which hydrant you're
Maybe
talking
it was
about.
corrected then.
but-
It was a old rusted fire hydrant way at the dead end, basically, of.
So you're talking about Dunn Road?
Yeah, Dunn Road.
Okay, so Dunn Road, there was one way at the end. We did replace that one
Yeah,
at
I'm sorry,
the
I
same
got the
time.
streets mixed up. It was Dunn Road at the dead end.
Yep, so
yeah.
we did replace that one way down, it's like in the bushes. So that one actually is now functioning. Maybe it wasn't prior to that project, but it is now.
So the reason I brought that up is I felt they were up here. We had two resources. up
Council,
here.
we're
Why
in a
not get
committee
the
meeting
information?
dealing
I
with
understand
flooding
that.
and the
But-
county ditch.
Mr.
If you start
Chairman-
adding things onto it, it's going to make it longer, and we have another item after this, and we won't have enough time for that item if we keep
Mr.
bringing
Chairman,
other items up. If
Whatever
you have a
makes you
problem,
happy.
if
it
you
makes
have a
you happy, I
problem,
will stop speaking. Whatever
Counselor-
makes you happy at the end of the day.
what I would say, Counselor, if you have a problem with a particular item, if it's a water hydrant, put a request in through 311, the water department will go check it out. And that's all I would request. Try not to bring up any
Like I said,
item
Mr.
other than the
Chairman,
county
whatever
ditch.
makes you happy.
Thank you, Counselor, I really appreciate that. So with that, just a quick question. Do we have any, I mentioned the county ditch behind Vanguard. Has there been any effort from the Ganji to try and clean that out? Because we turned that land over to him, if I believe.
So I believe that there has been, I think that former Superintendent Goodwin and also City Planner Frank Stringy were involved in, that project where they originally, I think, were going to create some floodplain, and then there was a kind of reevaluation with the developer's engineer, which I think was Hancock, to maybe change the strategy. I don't know offhand where that stands, but the last that I knew, there was a push to try to clean a section of the ditch from essentially North Shore Road to Revere Street. But I would have to defer to one of those two, or at least talk to them about what the time frame is.
Right, because that actually feeds Ocean Avenue. There's a line that goes from
Right.
Ocean Ave into the county ditch.
Correct.
Yeah, no,
Right,
thank
right.
you. So we'll touch base with him. Do you know anything about that?
I wanted to just add
Sure.
one more thing, if I could, to the explanation for Councilor Morbido. You mentioned a couple times the culvert, and the culvert is the sort of closed pipe.
I would make sure it's okay through the Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, if you can speak to me.
Sure.
I don't think that's appropriate, sir.
So there's both an open channel and a closed pipe, and there's been previous work, when Councilor Rizzo was mayor, there was a utility truck that actually fell into the ground in the Sagamore area, sunk into the pipe, because that was old wrinkled pipe, and some of that I know has been replaced since then. So there's two different issues, both the ditches and the culverts have to be clean and function in order for them to work, and I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Councilor Powers, since your ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the edification of the councilor to my right. 2 years ago, we replaced all of the water lines down there, mostly all new fire hydrants. Currently, this past month, we did Sagamore, we're doing Dunn Road, and Neponset Street with all new drainage. I could show you pictures after the meeting of some of the material that we took out of there. It's no wonder that, we didn't have problems. But these were pipes that were put in there 50, 60 years ago, maybe even before that. Now, getting back to the Eastern County Ditch. The Eastern County Ditch, the part that in that area runs from Wonderland, and I can show you pictures of that too, I was down there Saturday, that run from Wonderland under North Shore Road by the automobile sales place there, and they go down under Revere Street. Revere Street. Revere Street used to be a bridge years ago. There's a culvert under there now. I spoke with Frank Stringy the other day. Our goal is to get that culvert all cleaned, because we've put in all new catch basins, we've doubled the capacity of the lateral lines down there on those streets. We're going to be going in sometime later this year. We're going to be doing Calumet Street, drainage, sidewalks, and granite curb, the whole 9 yards. So they're working down there now, and our goal ultimately is to eliminate the flooding in that area. You're never going to eliminate it completely because you're several feet below sea level down there. But most of the homes built down there now have capacity storage for water underneath them. They had the openings. This will all be done very shortly. As a matter of fact, Essex County Mosquito Control was supposed to do the Eastern County ditch. We just heard the other day that they have been, they're not going to be doing it. So we're having a meeting with the mayor sometime this week to find another solution for that. But our ultimate goal is to clean the Eastern County ditch, and all of the new work that's been down there will serve no use until we get that ditch cleaned, and that's going to be done. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Patch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to know, I mean, I haven't heard actually how we're going to solve the problem of it flooding. Is there a problem with the size of the piping to go to the ditch, or do we have to clean out the culvert, or what's the answer? What has to be done there?
If I could, Counselor, I can respond to at least part of that question for you. I think that the very first thing we need to do is get everything cleaned out. As I think you heard earlier, that it was installed 50, 60 years ago and has sort of changed its use, and some of the culverts have expanded. It's no longer a bridge, it's a longer pipe. And some of the ditches are just full of feet of debris. So they're effectively creating dams within the ditches, as Councilor Powers mentioned a second ago. So both the culverts and the ditches require extensive cleaning to restore them to their functional capacity and their design intent. And then if there's repairs that are necessary because the pipe is falling apart itself, when you clean out the pipe, then you could look and see if we needed to do any patches or additional repairs beyond the work that the city's done already.
Does has this work started, or has a bid been put out to do this work yet?
Pieces of it have started, and additional work will be bid out over the coming months to do some of the more expensive sediment disposal. As I had told you before, Councilor Powers just indicated that the mosquito control won't be participating in doing the work. We just found that out recently, so we're now working to get some of the information that's necessary for the city to bid and complete the work. That won't be done.
Mosquito control ain't going to do anything about the flooding. We're
They-
here to
they
solve
pull
the
up-
problem of flooding.
They pull out the debris that actually allows the culvert to function, and that's what they've historically done to solve flooding problems. So the areas that pond water and create the larvae for the insects to grow, by freeing out the ditch, then it's not the ponded water. So that's why the mosquito control has helped in the past.
So you feel that by cleaning out the culverts and that this will handle the water that is now flooding on Sagamore Street?
If a pipe is half full, it has a quarter of the capacity. So just a foot of sediment in a 48-inch pipe can have a major impact on the overall capacity. So getting the feet of sediment and debris that exist in those ditches and in the culverts themselves out will help the city, yes.
Well, I'm glad you're looking into this for the Ward 5 councilor, because in my ward, in Ward 6, you're talking about the culverts being cleaned. I don't think they've been, the culverts in Ward 6 have been cleaned in my lifetime. So,
I would agree.
and that's a problem. I know that's another issue, and I don't want to get you mad at me, Mr. Chairman. But I mean, so I just want to know what the remedy is that you're doing to actually solve their problem in Sagamore.
And I would imagine that in your ward as well, that solution will come as well, because we will be looking at that too.
Thank you.
Only if it has to do with drainage. Councilor Morabito.
One more question. What is the time frame in a can you give me a comparison of a city where you had to clean both, where a ditch and the culvert had to be cleaned of this magnitude, and how long it took?
I'm working on a project right now in a big city nearby that had a flooding issue in 1996, and they've been working with the Army Corps of Engineers to deal with sediment and Phragmites and other invasive plants. They've completed one of the phases of the project, but it's been a multi-year effort. So problems of this magnitude are not easily solved, and a combination of city resources and federal or state help that we can get is part of what we're trying to do to solve the problem. In the past, again, the mosquito controller dug it out and just sort of placed it on the side. So past fixes haven't worked. We're trying to work with the city to develop a comprehensive fix that'll fix the problem once and for all, and then allow the city's Public Works Department, with the new staff they've been adding, to keep up with the maintenance. We've got to get them a baseline that they can then work from in order to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Just, so everybody gets a good idea, they were talking about Diamond Creek. And Diamond Creek is actually goes into the Pines River area. So it actually goes north, up North Shore Road, excuse me, out to North Shore Road and beyond, out into the Pines River, if I'm correct, Counselor.
Actually, it goes down along the back there, and it goes out into the Pines River, and that's where our tide gate is there.
Right.
And the tide gate is there to close during heavy rain events, and also we have the capacity to put a 6 or an 8-inch pump down there and pump over that tide gate if necessary, out into the open water.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Exactly. It's just so everybody gets an idea of where it's draining. It's not draining out into all the creeks all over the city, because, everybody's talking about digging stuff out. We have the area behind Seals Creek and behind the Garfield School, behind the old Shaw's site. The last time they tried to clean that out, I think it was about 8 or 9 years ago. And right now, it's all hazmat material down there from old oil leaks, and it would cost about $3 or $4 million to clean that out right now, because they can't just pile it on the side like it was side casting, like it was mentioned. So, but I would say that the main thing is to clean out the ditch, and that'll allow a lot of the flow to come out of the neighborhoods. So that's the key thing. We have no clue when the city's going to be able to come up with the money and the ideas and the engineering to get this done. But all I can say is we're working on it. Councilor Powers is on top of it. The superintendent's on top of it. Nick's on top of it, Nick Rystrom. And of course, CDM Smith is on top of it. So they're doing the best they can. I don't know if Councilor Rizzo has any final comments on this issue.
It's good to see that things are moving down there, Mr. Chairman. And, my concern, one of the statements that our engineer said, he said, well, you can replace your bathtub with a new bathtub, but if you don't have any drain, then that's not going to do any good. My concern, obviously, continues to lie with, development going on around the city and what's going to happen at Wonderlands at some point, right? So, if they're suffering right now and they're not going to get any relief, when we have some major development, we go out with an RFP or whatever happens down at Wonderland, what's going to happen there? So I just think that, we work on this to the extent possible. Cleaning the ditch, cleaning the culverts. Councilor Powers just brought up the idea of a pump station. I think we need to be forward-thinking if we're going to be, continuing down this track that the city seems to be going in. So, and certainly for the benefit of the residents that live down there right now, we really need to get right on this. And like my opinion, there's a lot of work going on around the city. It seems like streets are dug up all over the place by various utilities, whether it's gas work, water lines, sewer lines, whatever. But, this is an area that I think really, it's getting worse. So, with all the work that we've had done, this is an area that the residents down there have seem to, have seen things get worse. Now, again, not to reiterate, Mr. Chairman, but Councilor Powers did say that there has been work done down there, and I don't know if residents down there have seen any relief or had the opportunity to see if there's any relief as a result of that work. But, you know, I think we have a lot of work to do, and I'd like to see money spent on removing and cleaning these culverts and ditches for sure, because, and like Councilor Patch said, you know, in his lifetime, he probably hasn't seen it done with our next topic that we're going to be talking about. And I would venture to say it's the same thing with the Eastern County ditch and the Central County ditch. I'm sure that we really haven't invested any resources down there. So I'd like to see that happen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. Anybody from the audience like to say anything? Please step up. Name and address for the record, please.
Pat Malcano, Sagamore Street. John Powers is absolutely right that we did an awful lot of work there the last 2 years. We did the water pipes and the drain pipes. And he's also right that it's going to all be for naught unless we clean the culvert. And I have a great rapport with all the guys down there because I'm always fooling around with them the last couple of years. And I also have a great rapport with all the project managers that come down there. And they all agree that we're going to keep flooding until the culvert's cleaned. And I'm afraid this gentleman is failing to say one word, but I could be wrong. I'm wondering if the EPA is what's keeping them from testing, is that what's holding up some testing? Not at all? Because one of the city people said that they thought that we can't get at the culvert because there's testing going on. And I said, well, that's all well and good but we can still get some crap out of the culvert, which would help. And we can do that, you know, DPW can do that before we do big clean out of the culvert. But like John Powers says, and Dan that brought this great motion, we're gonna keep flooding. All that money we spent, do you see that that road's been dug up at least 10 times? All water pipes, all drain pipes, and we're going to keep flooding until that culvert is cleaned out. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Pat.
With that, no other comments? Well, I think we can close this item out, and we'll bring it up at the committee meeting, the council meeting, and for now, we'll place it on file until we get some further information. Okay? With that, do I hear a motion from the committee to place on file? Recommendation? So move. Thank you. The next item is 18092, and I'll read it, that the mayor requests the appropriate agency of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to clean the culvert that runs along Astor Avenue. This state property has never been properly maintained. Further, residents of Green Tree Lane and Caruso Court dump yard waste into the culvert, adding to the amount of debris in the culvert. Since the culvert has never been maintained, this neighborhood floods with each heavy rain event. Councilor Patch, you want to do this first, or Councilor Rizzo?
I'll defer to Councilor Patch. He's the ward councilor.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this has been an ongoing problem. But, you know, the DPW is responsible for cleaning the trash that's thrown in there and all that. But as I noticed at the culvert that runs along St. Mary's, I was told then that the dirt and soot that lays on the bottom of the culvert probably has never been cleaned, and that's up to the. That's why I'm a little disappointed that the DCR or the MassDOT or even the EPA, who were invited to be here tonight, aren't here, because that's who's actually responsible for cleaning the culvert. So we really can't come to any conclusion here tonight, I don't think, because they didn't show. But again, it's the same problem that they have down in Ward 5. It's just maintaining them from the state and the city make sure that the gates are all clean. And that's all I got to say right now.
Thank you, Councilor Rizzo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just to reiterate what Councilor Patch said, it's the same situation over here down on Asti Ave and Toscano and Geneva and all those surrounding streets down there. They're facing as the residents down on Sagamore are. And again, it comes down to just cleaning the ditches, cleaning the culverts. My heart goes out to Mr. Falzone, who for years, since the work was done down there to help alleviate the flooding under the Ambrosino administration, which went a long way to helping it. But the problem lies in when there's big storms and with the contribution of all the, debris and waste products that are put into that culvert, into the, that leads up to the trash gates on Asti Ave. Once those trash gates block, there's a real problem down there, and especially if it's a real heavy rain, one of these 100-year storms. Poor Mr. Falzone, he's at the stage of his life that not only is it getting difficult for him to go out and clean the trash gates if we don't have somebody permanently stationed down there, but it's now a case where we've locked the gate to keep people from going in there for various reasons, whether it's so they don't hurt themselves or so they don't tamper with the gate or whatever the case is. But he has been the go-to person down in that neighborhood because he has had to live through many different storms that have flooded that neighborhood out and has caused a great deal of hardship and a great deal of loss to homes down in that area. So he has this inherent panic every time that a major storm approaches our community. And so I personally think, and it's the reason that Councilor Janino, Councilor Patch, and myself put this motion in, is to kind of like, say, hey, we need to address this once and for all. It's, it can't, this has to be, this has to be a situation where we look to outside help, and that's the reason that we asked our state delegation to get involved, along with DOT. And I don't know if DCR plays a role in this at all. I'm not sure, but whoever the state agencies are who would play a role, I, Mr. Chairman, would like them to do a walkthrough with us. That was originally what I thought this motion was to do, to meet affected residents down there and walk through, once the weather got nicer, to be able to walk through and show them what we're talking about. Sometimes it's easier to show somebody something than to give them a written motion. So that really was the goal of this whole thing. And it looks like, based on this, that these agencies were invited here, the EPA, the DOT. There's no representatives here tonight, but I would like to lay this on the table before we start talking about placing on file. My vote would be to lay on the table and actually schedule this walkthrough down there so that we can get some actual results as a, so that he doesn't have to be, panicked this whole time. And also those trash gates, I would like to the superintendent or to Bob Button here, somebody to address the trash gates so that we know that they will be clear and kept clear during major storms. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Rizzo. Obviously, the huge issue is cleaning the culverts and the whole ditch as a permanent solution. But we will certainly, as in years past, I know we did it for years. I don't know if that's fallen off the last year or so. We used to station people up on the highway to clean those trash racks, because you could clean them and then within 20 minutes, a half an hour, they just block up again. So that is a very temporary solution to a very serious problem. So we will either reinstate that practice or continue it when we do have heavy storms, just for a temporary solution. But obviously, the big solution is to have that whole area cleaned out properly by those state agencies. So we certainly will commit to that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paul.
If I
Mr.
could
Button.
add to the superintendent's remarks, we were also wanted to offer to Councilor Rizzo to set up any time that works for the committee and the members of the public. We'd be happy to go out there. Similar to the maps you have in front of us, we can provide the background to explain to people what's going on and point out what some of the issues are and why there's such a challenge to the city. So in conferring with DPW and engineering, we'll make that happen whenever you folks schedule it.
If I may, and I don't know if Councilor Janino wants to chime in, or any of the councilors, the other councilors that are here, but I know that our city clerk has had to step out, but I would like, if we could, Mr. Chairman, to ask the clerk to maybe schedule that, to schedule a walkthrough with our own Public Works Department, with CDM Smith, and with DOT, and DCR if they are in fact part of that. I don't know if they are or not, but you know, the agencies that would be involved with the culvert and the, you know, that runs along that area, that would be helpful if she could help schedule that in conjunction with the residents.
Yep, absolutely. And we've been out there in the past, the DPW crews that you're mentioning on Asti, I've personally seen them out there doing the work that you're talking about, so we're happy to help.
They absolutely have in the past, and I'm not, this isn't a, look, these meetings, as far as I'm concerned, are not throwing anybody under the bus. They're trying to come up with some solutions here to try to keep people from flooding. You know, there's nothing worse than to either have backup of sewer into your home or to have floodwater, stormwater that you're panicked about flowing into your house. So we just want to make sure that we're doing all we can to help that out, you know, to help out that situation.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Bob.
Council President Janino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, this was a great motion that I was happy to be a part of, but I think Councilor Rizzo is right that the original intent was to be on site, because it's one thing to talk about it here, which we've talked about for several weeks, but we're not accomplishing anything by talking about it here. So it's disappointing that we didn't hear anything back from the organizations that we reached out to, but that doesn't mean we're not going to be persistent and get the results that we're looking for. So I look forward to walking down there with the DPW and CDM and my colleagues in the council and really figuring out what our best solution is to accomplish this with what means we have, and also what we need to do to move forward, because the Asti Ave neighborhood is lucky to have the representatives that they do that are out there working for them and fixing it. However, it's not the residents' responsibility, it's our responsibility as a city to have these issues resolved. So I think it's a good idea to keep it on the table and to get who we need down there and schedule that. So thank you.
Thank you. Question, if anybody else in the council? Council Patch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul, congratulations on our new superintendent. Very much. I just want to question, because I know under the past administration, we used to have the DPWs to get overtime, and they used to be able to, the real heavy storms, they did station people at that gate. And then from what I understand, the overtime was taken away. Is there any way we can get that overtime back and make Mr. Falzoni feel a lot safer and that he can rely on the city better, if we could see if we can get that back, having somebody stationed there?
Positively, we're not going to let
Storm?
an overtime cost have flooding in neighborhoods. We're going to do whatever we can to alleviate the situation, and if that practice has been stopped, we will certainly start that up again.
Well, it has been stopped, but
It
yeah.
has. Oh, well, we will certainly be there during heavy rain events and be stationed up on the highway to clean the trash rack. We're certainly not going to let a small amount of money stop, stop us from going there to help alleviate flooding problems.
Very good. Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Thanks.
Paul, before you sit down, I know you mentioned about going up on the highway, and I know the rack itself is on a MassDOT property. Is it easier for you guys to get it from up top or from where the gate is?
Either one. I mean, I think we used to station up on the highway because we're out of the water. You could come down the hill, pull things out of there. I mean, whatever the water department needs to do, whatever they think is easier for them, we will do. I mean, we're not going to let a gate stop us from getting in there. I mean,
Okay, no, I was
Cut the
just
law.
curious, whether or not we wanted to get a key to that gate, and have it maintained in your possession or someone in your
We'll
department.
certainly get a key, but I mean, if we need to get in there, a key won't stop us, so we'll get it.
Okay, but I would also say that, there isn't much that we, as a city council, can do. This is a step higher in the food chain. And I think one of my recommendations was, going to be, and I don't mind keeping it in committee, but one of my recommendations was to bump this up to Representative Vincent. It's state property, and if we do the walkthrough, that she make the effort to get someone from MassDOT to join us on that walk, because we have to get higher than us. We ourselves are not going to solve the cleaning of the ditch ourselves. And I do want to just make a recommendation to Mr. Falzone that there's a reason that they don't let you on that property. There's a liability issue, and they don't want you to get hurt. And neither do we. And we know you love the city. We know you've been doing this for the last 25 years or so. And we want to make it right, but we don't want you injured. 2 minutes, sir.
First of all, I want to thank yourself for coming. Nick, congratulations. Nick Reimstrom started this whole program. When he told me a story about this Mr. Coletti from the DOT, turned around and he said to me that he's been calling this man for quite a long time. And he answered that this department had told him that the public's not complaining, so until they do, don't bother me. So many words. So when I heard that, then I started calling this guy. I've been calling this department for almost a year and a half. I got no answers, and I was telling Charlie Patch. Name recognition went a long way with this story. Charlie Patch called this man. 20 minutes later, I got a call from Charlie Patch, and it worked. He spoke to Mr. Coletti, and problem's going to be solved. And it's still going on today. I've never seen this man, haven't seen anybody from the DOT, but it's making some headway, which I really appreciate, thanks to Charlie Patch, Rizzo, Councilor Giannino. Thank you very much for hearing my plea. I'm going to call this problem Caruso Court Culvert. There's no other name I can call it. So with that new title for that, everybody can understand what my nightmare is.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Button, for a second.
I just, 1 second, wanted to add that in addition to having the DOT at the meeting, DCR is a critical part because both of those state agencies have responsibility.
Okay, through you to the clerk, we're making a recommendation that a walkthrough be conducted on Asti Ave at the trash rack area, and that the city council be invited, Representative Vincent, and that she requires DCR and MassDOT to have a representative at that walkthrough. Anything else, folks, councilors? Okay, with that, gentlemen, thank you for your time, your efforts, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Councilors, thank you for a good meeting, and we're 2 minutes ahead of schedule. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.